Good morning. Welcome to Cedars Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Grace, and I am the worship associate for our virtual service today, alongside our minister, Zachary Vinson. Before we start, let's pause to acknowledge that members of our congregation occupy the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of Coast Salish tribes. The homelands of the Suquamish, Duwamish, Klallam, and Chimicum people were ceded under duress through the Point Elliott and Point No Point treaties. We are grateful guests on these lands and affirm Indigenous sovereignty, both past and present. This acknowledgement does not substitute for the need to build authentic relationships with modern-day members of these tribes and to learn about their living culture and history. Our faith community is sustained by the generosity of our members. Your contribution will nourish the spiritual growth of our community through weekly worship and ongoing programs that cultivate connection, belonging, sharing, and caring. Included in the video description and displayed on the screen is information to make a contribution to Cedars through our PayPal account. Please take time either now or later in the service to make a contribution to help sustain Cedars. Your gifts are greatly appreciated. Cedars is committed to being a welcoming and inclusive community. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, and skin tones that come together in your uniqueness, we welcome you. In all the ways you experience and express gender, and in the beauty of whom you love and how you love, we welcome you. With all the religious and ethical traditions that inform your spiritual life, we welcome you. You are invited to join us today and always with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. I have had many teachers, quite a lot actually, throughout my education, but a great deal of those teachers are not educators from school. A great many of those teachers are people from whom I've learned valuable lessons, people from whom I've gained wisdom beyond anything I could learn in a classroom. As those who know me well can attest to, I have a fiery temper and am very stubborn, particularly in an argument. Now, as one might expect, this kind of got in the way just a little bit, especially when I clashed with my brother at a younger age. As my mom would say, I flared up as soon as he made his argument, immediately preparing my retort rather than listening to what he had to say. Well, as any wise and experienced person might tell you, that is not at all the way to have a constructive argument. For years and years and years, and even to this day, my mother, who was a professor, has coached me gently and calmly, helping me to practice using an open mind and heart. No matter how much I protested, resisted, or claimed it wouldn't help, Mom instilled in me the skills it takes to have a good relationship with someone. It is partially due to her, I believe, that I have such a good relationship with my brother now. Now, parents are the obvious choice for me to talk about a person who's taught me something, but it's true. While my mother coached me on my temper, my father recognized his stubbornness in me and taught me to fight for what I wanted, and to pursue knowledge to whatever end I desired. While both my parents were exceptional students, I have always looked to my father to guide me when I need practical comfort. My mom is the one to go to if I'm upset with Marshall, Dad, or myself, but Dad is the one to go to when I need to take comfort in the fact that you're more likely to die in a car accident than in a plane crash. But perhaps most importantly, I continue to learn from my parents what it is to have a healthy, nurtured partnership with another person, and what a healthy, nurtured relationship is. Now, enough with the parents. I have been taught, influenced by, gained wisdom from so many different people, it would take the entire service just to name them all. Diana Peters, for example, has taught me not to be afraid of death, to accept that we are meant to die, and when the time comes, to embrace it with open arms, and to respect those whose time has come. Donna Moore has taught me that you don't have to lead a life like others to have a meaningful time on the earth. My grandmother taught me how to have strength when you have a medical condition that seems determined to bring you down. My dear brother teaches me tolerance and empathy every time I say something to him that I couldn't bear if he said to me, and how to have active, open-minded, and hearted communication. He teaches me how to be silly, how to enjoy life, how to love being with others. I could write a whole sermon on how much Marshall teaches and means to me. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to search for teachers everywhere, not just where you look for them. No matter the age, no matter the subject, no matter if you think of them as teachers or not, we can all learn from one another. Inside every community is someone just waiting to knowingly or unknowingly impart their wisdom. We can all be teachers. We all, no matter the age, no matter the subject, can share our experiences. As the wise and famous 900-year-old Jedi Master Yoda says in Star Wars Return of the Jedi, pass on what you have learned. So I would urge you, listen to the little green guru. Whether you know it or not, there are people in your life who want to teach you, want to learn from you, want to listen to you. I firmly believe that if we all learned from each other a little bit more, we could make the world a better place. I dedicate the lighting of this flaming chalice to the unique knowledge each of us holds within us, waiting to be released to the world.
As we come together to worship, we remind ourselves to treat all people kindly because we are one family.
To take good care of the earth because it is our home.
And to live lives full of love and goodness because that is how we will all become the best that we can be.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, 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 whoever you are, condemned, worshipper, whoever you're leaving, God is no worshipper, lover is leaving, God is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, whoever you are, condemned, worshipper, whoever you're leaving, God is no worshipper, lover is leaving. Come yet again, come.
So it's a busy time right now in the life of Cedars. Some of you may have seen an announcement recently go out in the beacon and be communicated in other places about our return to in-person worship. We're planning to have our first in-person worship service after over a year and a half on Sunday, October 24th at the Island School. There's a lot of logistics we're working out. There's some of the technology we're trying to integrate into the space to figure out all of the social distancing requirements. And so, as I said, it's a busy time, but it's also an exciting time because it represents a return to a little bit of that, I don't want to say normalcy, but that in-person life that many of us have missed. And so be on the lookout for more details in the coming weeks about how we'll be returning together, including just plans for everyone's health and safety when we get back together. And for those of you who are interested in helping out in any way, please feel free to reach out to myself or a member of the board because we could always use more help in figuring out some of the logistics and what all needs to be done as we come back together. And with that said, I would like to offer this quote from Albert Schweitzer as our call to worship this day. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Come, let us worship together. For our faith formation moment, I want to share a story with all of you that I came up with. And it's a story inspired by some rather remarkable crows in Japan. In this story, it's one crow. And the thing that they learn to do through exploring things with curiosity and engaging in observational learning. And so here is your story. So not that long ago, there was a crow named Kathy. And Kathy was a very, very curious crow. She spent a lot of her day just flying around the city where she lived, watching what all the other crows and animals and people in the city were doing. She liked to sit and watch the mice scamper in the alleyways between buildings looking for a morsel of food to nibble on. She liked to watch as the other crows congregated on telephone wires above dumpsters, hoping to find the lid left open so they could scavenge the contents inside. She loved to watch as the people came out of their houses and apartments and got in their cars and on buses and bikes and whizzed about the city and went about their business for the day. Kathy loved to watch all these things and to sit and puzzle and figure things out, how stuff worked, how the wheels moved the bus, how the people pedaling the bike moved the bikes and themselves. Kathy was very curious. Kathy also, after many years of expressing curiosity and going around, had thought that she had seen everything that there was to see in the city, that all of the things to see and do had been seen and done. That was until one day, as Kathy was flying over this park that she loved so much, and she looked down, and at a great distance she saw a family sitting at a picnic table, smashing rocks and eating them. She was confused. Why are these people smashing these rocks and eating them? Kathy wondered. And her curiosity got the better of her. She flew down close and landed in a tree to watch this family. It didn't take long of Kathy watching from a closer distance to realize that these weren't rocks. In fact, she recognized what these were. These were nuts that grew on various trees that Kathy knew about, trees all over the city. There were acorns and walnuts, and Kathy recognized them because she had been in those trees. But this was interesting, she thought. When crows want to eat a nut, we tend to fly way up high in the air and drop it. And here, these people are smashing the nuts? How efficient, she thought. Kathy sat watching the family smashing open these nuts for some time, wondering how she might also crack nuts like this. And then an idea came to Kathy, and she flew off with such speed to a place where an acorn tree grew. She zoomed under the tree and found a plump acorn, and picking it up in her beak, flew off into the city. She found a place where the cars zoomed past. And flying over the road, Kathy dropped the acorn, and right as she did, a car zoomed past and cracked the nut. "It worked!" she exclaimed. Kathy flew down to the ground and picked the pieces of nut out of the shell and ate them, and then flew off to grab another acorn and do the same thing, and then another acorn to do the same thing, and she repeated the process again and again until she had her fill of acorns for the day. Kathy Crow felt very proud of herself. Her curiosity and observations had helped her figure out something new. This new, efficient way to crack nuts instead of having to drop them from a great height. Soon, Kathy taught all the other crows this new way of cracking nuts. And that is the story of how crows came to crack nuts. For a spiritual practice, I'd like to offer these words of prayer by Reverend Lynn Cox, titled, A Web of Holy Relationships. Spirit of life, who draws us together in a web of holy relationships, make your presence known with us and in us and among us. Remind us that we are not alone in history. Ignite us with courage of the living tradition. Remind us that we are not alone in entering the future. Anchor us with patience and perseverance. Remind us that we are not alone in our times of grief and pain. Comfort us with your Spirit, manifest in human hands and voices. Remind us that we are not alone in joy and wonder. Inspire us in honor and extend the beauty we find in this world. Divine music of the universe, let our hearts beat in diverse and harmonious rhythms, cooperating with an everlasting dance of love. May we move with the rhythm of peace. May we move with the rhythms of compassion. May we move with the rhythms of justice. Source of stars and planets and water and land, open our hearts to all of our neighbors. Open our souls to a renewal of faith. Open our hands to join together in the work ahead. So be it. Blessed be. Amen. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. This quote by Albert Schweitzer is found in the back of our hymnal and has been a source of frequent reminder for me about the way that people tend to show up in my life in those hard times. In those times of strife and struggle, when it feels like our inner fire or my inner fire has gone out, and suddenly along comes a friend or a colleague or someone else in your life, a family member maybe, and says something or does something to help bolster us up and carry on. Maybe it's a card or a note of encouragement or a text message that comes at just the right moment. A simple sentence reminding us we aren't alone when we feel lonely, when life feels hard. It's not always the case, but at times when our own light goes out, others show up and help us rekindle it. I think that it's perhaps easier to think about this connection, this way that we bolster each other in these hard moments, in these moments when we're in crisis or we feel depleted, that it's maybe easier to see the profoundness in the way that we show up for each other. But I guess it's almost like somehow in those dim places that the light of others, when it's offered, shines all the brighter. That the contrast between the hard times that we are in and the care showed by another has a power and intensity to it. Such moments can feel transformative or inspiring. They can help to reignite us and continue on to endure in stuff that is otherwise difficult. But what about our connection to each other in the rest of our lives? In those times when maybe we aren't necessarily going through a defined crisis. In those times when, dare I say it, things are normal. How are we present to each other in our day-to-day lives? And what force links us together then? What way are we connected then? So, we do not exist in isolation. As Unitarian Universalists, this is something we affirm in our seventh principle, a statement that calls us to show respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. This statement calls us to live into a reality that acknowledges the truth that we are not alone. Through good and bad, we are connected. When I speak of this connection, it can sound a bit grand. But I'm not just speaking about some metaphysical truth. This is a reality, this connection is a reality that I do believe is woven into the whole of existence. We are physically connected to one another through the earth, our connection with the earth, the air, the water. We are physically connected. We are socially connected to each other through our friendships and family relationships, through the organizations that we belong through our commitments. In these ways, we are socially connected, bound together. And perhaps, too, in some sort of spiritual way, in a spiritual dimension, we are also connected. Part of some great cosmic whole that we just yet have perceived in its entirety. Recognizing such a connection causes me to wonder how this connection is manifest in our lives in ways that we haven't yet realized, and what comes when we take the time to notice. So there's a form of learning that psychologists refer to as observational learning. It's pretty much what the title indicates. This sort of learning takes place in social settings in which participants observe the behavior of others and in turn model their behavior on what was observed. Observational learning is perhaps most apparent to many of us in situations where we are called on to, quote, show a good example or be a good example. For instance, I know I have been told on a few occasions not to swear in front of kids, or to roughhouse with my older siblings in front of my younger siblings, or otherwise do things that might sort of set a bad example. We do this, we sort of protect people from these bad examples because we know that with regular exposure to behaviors, people begin to mirror those behaviors back. They observe those behaviors and then reflect them back. So maybe swearing in front of children teaches them it's okay to swear, which I don't know if is a huge issue for me, but others do. I'm also not a parent. But it's not just the bad things that get mirrored back. It's not just the swearing or the fighting or other behaviors that we don't want present that get mirrored back. It's also the positive behaviors, the positive interactions. When we exhibit kindness and show up and show patience or love to the people in community, the people around us, those emotions oftentimes get mirrored back. Not always, there's exceptions to this, but when you create a culture where these emotions are the ones that are predominant, in time it creates a dynamic where we all start to mirror those back to one another. We learn how to behave, what to do, and how to be from each other. We learn from watching and engaging with the people in our lives, from observing and mirroring back. But this mirroring isn't something that is unique to us as humans. Researchers in animal psychology have found that when animals are given a task to complete, so something maybe like cracking nuts, they are almost always more successful after watching another animal perform the task first. That if an animal is going to complete a task, they're more likely to be successful if someone else showed them. Whether it be caring for their young, building a nest, learning to swim, or cracking nuts. Like humans, many animals seem to learn from observing other animals, and oftentimes even from observing animals of other species. Maybe a crow observing what humans are doing. Now, I'm sure that for many of you, this is not radical new information. I think we've seen the way that people can influence each other, how culture can be shaped in our lives. However, I do believe that if we really dug into this way of learning, this idea that we are learning and shaping each other in these relationships, that we would find many of the things we know in our lives were learned in such informal, observational ways. That many of the ways that we did learn to navigate relationships were learned in these informal ways. Rarely is it a formal educational setting where we're taught how to be together. There are exceptions, I think, where classroom dynamics and things like that, but for the most part, we learn how to be together through modeling, through observing, through mirroring. Things we picked up, things that we have picked up or otherwise have rubbed off on us become part of who we are when we're in this conversation of relationships. Whether as a child or an adult, we learn from each other in the presence of each other, whether in person or in virtual spaces. This is something that Grace spoke about in her reflection when she shared all the things that she has learned about from people in her life. Not the usual things like math or reading or things like that, but other lessons. Lessons about life and death and meaning. Lessons of patience and endurance. Lessons about tolerance and open-hearted grace. These lessons are things that we are always learning from each other, that we are always learning in conversation with each other. As Grace reminds us again, no matter the age, no matter the subject, no matter if you think of them as a teacher or not, we all can learn from one another. Inside every community is someone just waiting to, knowingly or unknowingly, impart their wisdom. We can all be teachers. It's not just in the moments when we feel that our inner light has gone out that we depend on each other for support and care. In every interaction, throughout our lives, we are learning from each other. We are being shaped by each other. When we come together in community, like we do here at Cedars, we are teaching each other how to be together. This is what we can learn from each other. I want to close by sharing one more quote from Grace, who reminds us that whether you know it or not, there are people in your life who want to teach you, want to learn from you, want to listen to you. I firmly believe that if we all learn from each other a little bit more, we can make the world a better place. To the glory of life.
Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was walking and talking with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Walking and
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth.
the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our service has ended, but our service to the world and one another begins anew. As we go forth, may we be willing to listen and learn, to be both teacher and student in the school of community.